So before, a couple years ago, we had never processed chickens before, and really when we decided to do it over the last couple of years, we were super new to the process and didn't really know what we were doing. So don't let it, if that's where you're coming from, don't let it intimidate you. You can totally process your own chickens at home, and we're gonna walk you through kind of step by step what you need to know to process your own chickens at home. Last year was the first year we did our own home processing of chickens. And so last year we did 2 rounds of chickens, the first with 18 birds and the second with 23 birds. And then this past year we just finished doing our chickens, but instead of doing 2 smaller batches, we actually chose to build a second chicken tractor and combine our chickens to just doing one big butchering session and do 63 chickens in one fell swoop and went for it. So we're gonna kind of just talk through what we learned along the way to help hopefully make your life easier. So this is not gonna be a video about kind of a step-by-step how to actually butcher a chicken, but this is gonna be kind of all the details and things you need to know to get you ready for butchering day, having all the right equipment you need, having everything set up so that you can feel really confident heading into it that you can go ahead and do this yourself.
It's like a companion guide. I'm sure there's other videos out there explaining the process and all the ins and outs of butchering a chicken. We're just going to take you through everything else you need to know so you're ready to go that day.
But one thing you should know about actually butchering a chicken itself is there are plenty of really good videos out there, but there's really no one right way to do it. So feel the freedom to, you might watch a video that says discard all the organs, but I like to keep the organs because we like to make chicken pate with the livers and the hearts and things like that. So if that's you, do it. If you want to discard them, discard them. Like every video is going to kind of have their own way of doing things. So just know that there's no one perfect way of doing it. You figure out what works for you and feel the freedom to do that.
And just to mention this up front, I had actually partaken in a chicken processing day on another farm prior to this. And that is a really helpful thing to have gone through the process ahead of time so you're not showing up, that day, never having really gone through all the steps in the process before. There's a lot of different steps involved in it, and so if you have the opportunity to volunteer at a farm or somebody else who processes their own chickens, it's totally worth it to talk to them, see if you can come help out with them prior to you doing it on your own first. That's the best way you're going to get to know the process and the steps involved. You can watch a million videos on it, but until you actually reach your hands inside a chicken and pull out the guts and know what you're looking at and what's going on there's just no replacing that. So that's totally the best way to go and get prepared for your actual own home butchering session.
Yeah. So what do you need to get prepared for butchering day?
Yeah, so there's some things, I guess leading up to that day, there's some things you're going to want to consider. One big thing to consider is your freezer situation. You want to have that ready and organized well before butchering day. You want to have all your freezers plugged in, ready to go days before so they're fully, at frozen cold temperatures. So what we've done is we do a lot of clearing out of our freezer space and open up freezers, and then we don't fill them all the way. You never want to just fill a freezer totally with fresh,
we actually had
chickens.
A friend who put an entire freezer full of warm chickens, but then the freezer, because of all those warm chickens, isn't able to chill those chickens fast enough, and they actually had a whole freezer of spoiled, rotten chickens because they just didn't get cold fast enough. So learn from that. Make sure you are not completely filling a giant freezer filled of warm chickens. Spread them out over multiple freezers
So what we do, and we've had really good luck with this, is we fill it halfway, any freezer that we have, we fill it halfway with the fresh chickens, and then we take other frozen things we already have, whether it's ice packs or ground beef or other things you have in your freezer, and fill the rest of the freezer up with frozen things already. And that just helps everything kind of stabilize in there. It helps the chickens themselves cool down and freeze a lot faster. So we've had really good success with that. And also, if you are looking for freezers, don't feel like you have to go out and buy a brand new one. There's tons of freezers out there, like on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist. That's what we did. We had to pick up another small little
chest freezer.
and we found one for, what was it?
$75.
$75
It
used.
was like super new and nice.
Yeah, really great deals. Freezers are one thing you're going to want to check on well in advance. Make sure you're set up and ready to go. Another thing that goes along with the freezers is how you're going to package your chickens before they go into the freezer. So that's kind of the last step of the process. But we get these poultry bags that shrink. They kind of shrink wrap around the chicken. So we have to order those online.
We can link below to the exact ones that we've gotten them every time, and we've been very happy with them.
Yeah, they're great. They provide a really great seal. The chickens last a long time in them, but we use those and have had really good success with them. And you just basically put a zip tie around it, drop it into hot water. It shrinks around the chicken, and there's a straw involved in there too. And it's a really straightforward process. So whatever you're going to be packaging them in, you just want to make sure you order that or have that well in advance of your processing day. Another thing to think through is how you're going to move your chickens to the area that you're processing. And this is a really easy one just to overlook and get there the day of and be like, oh yeah, all my chickens are like out back in the field, and how am I going to get them closer to where I want them to be now? So if you have some sort of small livestock trailer or even just trailer, that's obviously a really good option. You could even just use like a wheelbarrow or garden cart with like a cover that you can put over it just to kind of move multiple chickens at once. What we did is actually just took our tractor and dragged it like all the way across the field with all the chickens in it. It was kind of carefully. It was kind of time intensive and took a while, so we probably should have done that a little bit sooner. But that's just something you want to think through, moving your chickens in advance, making sure you have whatever equipment needed or borrowed or something for that. And this probably goes without saying, if we're, like I said, we're not going to show you how to actually process a chicken in this video, but you want to make sure that you plan ahead and don't feed your chickens for some period of time prior to processing. We've heard anywhere from like 8 hours up to 24 hours. Basically, you just want your chickens' systems to be kind of cleared out of their feed prior to processing, because it just makes it a lot smoother, cleaner process to have them not have feed.
Yeah, and we do have, I mean, our chickens are on grass all the time, and so some of the chickens, even though we cut off their feed the day before, they did just devour the grass, and so their feed sacks were full of grass. But I mean, yeah, so that's kind of up to you. If you wanna, you could pull them off grass or whatever, but just to note that. So what equipment is necessary for chicken processing?
Yeah, so we're gonna kind of walk you through each stage of the process and just some helpful things to think through, things to have on hand and be prepared with at each station along the way, and kind of what we did and what we've learned to make the process go smoother. So the first thing is, obviously, once you bring your chickens in, the first thing is killing them. What we do is we just have killing cones that we basically screw into a tree. So you'll pick out a tree location. In this instance, we actually were able to, we had a tree that was kind of in like a landscaped area because it's going to drain down a lot of blood. This all happened like right behind our house. And so, you know, we didn't want like a giant bloodbath right behind our house. So anyways, we picked a tree that was kind of a little bit out of the way. We actually, we thought we had some killing cones lined up for the day of processing, and that sort of fell through. So we were scrambling to figure that out last minute. We actually found a video on YouTube of how to make a killing cone out of a 5-gallon bucket, which we had plenty of. So we just made some really quick out of 5-gallon buckets, and they worked great.
Yeah, so we, for having 60 plus chickens, we had 4 killing cones, which was not 100% ideal. We would have loved to have more like 6 to 8 killing cones. The killing cones can be, or the killing part of the process can be kind of a bottleneck in the process, a part that just takes longer. And so it's nice, it's really, depending on how many chickens you're processing and how much help you have, it's nice to have plenty of killing cones to just make the process continue to run smoothly and efficiently. Yeah. Like one would be not very,
it would be a really slow process
unless you were only doing a few chickens.
Yep. So the more the better. If you can get your hands on as many as possible, then you're going to be really rapid firing through that part. So after you kill them and they drain out their blood, then you go on to the scalder. So the scalder is essentially a big pot that gets up, I don't even, ours was set to maintain a certain temperature. I think it's around 150 to 170 degrees, somewhere in that range. But the scalder, essentially, you dip them in there for like 10 to 15 seconds, really get them in there good. That helps them release their feathers. So after that, then they go to the plucker. And so we were fortunate enough to be able to borrow a drum plucker that spins. It's really quick, efficient, from some neighbors, and that works great. It's also one of the things you want to have there at that station is a hose with a spray nozzle, because you want to hose that down, make sure all the feathers are kind of passing through it and not getting clogged up in there. So having a hose on hand.
What if someone doesn't have access to a scalder and a plucker?
Yeah, so like we said, we were able to borrow it from neighbors, which is great. These are obviously really big pieces of equipment. If you're just processing 20 to 30 birds a year, it might not make sense to buy these on your own. But that's the great thing about kind of the more rural homesteading community, is somebody out there is going to have these locally close to you. And you can,
even our feed store here locally has a plucker that actually they just make available for rent for a pretty minimal price, because so many people in the area are doing it but don't actually want to purchase a plucker themselves.
Yeah, so talk to other small-scale farmers or homesteaders near you. People you know, if you go online and find somebody who sells their own chickens that they process, chances are they're going to have this equipment or know somebody who has it. And so talk to them, see what they do, if you might be able to work something out where you can borrow equipment or rent it.
And even for us, the first time we did it with borrowing the equipment, that actually meant us doing the chicken processing at our neighbor's farm instead of our own. And so it just might require being a little bit flexible with what it looks like. You know, you might not be able to do it at your home, but maybe somebody else's, to use their equipment, and it's totally worth it, in our opinion, to be able to have that equipment to use.
Yeah, and you can totally pluck by hand too.
Yeah.
It's just a very slow process. That will become the bottleneck part of the process then. And
that's what we do if we're just doing like one chicken on the side. But if we're doing a bunch, a plucker is nice.
There are also smaller contraptions. Like, I know a friend who recently got a drill attachment that's a little plucker. And he's going to be processing his chickens soon, so I'll be curious to hear how that goes. But anything is faster than hand plucking, so it could be a really good kind of middle ground option too, just to pick something up.
Yeah, so after plucking,
then you bring them over to kind of your gutting table, I guess you would call it. So that's where you're going to actually be chopping off the head and the feet and pulling out the insides of the chicken. And so just having a really big table space for this. This is sort of the other area that you find bottlenecks at, because especially if you're like beginning at it like we are.
It just takes a while to learn what each part is, and are you getting everything out that you should be getting out. It just, once you get going, it goes much faster. But at the beginning, those first couple chickens, it's just learning, and it just takes a while. Yeah,
so as many hands as you can have on deck here, helping to with that whole process of getting the guts out and everything. We were able to borrow a big, like, nice stainless steel table. You can also just use those like white folding tables, but you'll want some really good sharp knives. We used like fillet knives for like a fish, but
those work really, really well. It is helpful to have the right tool for the job, because bad knives will make the process not very fun.
Yeah, and also we used a meat cleaver for chopping off heads and feet. That was an essential part of the process. Good cutting boards. One thing you also want there at that station is plenty of buckets around for like any like intestines and guts and things that you're not holding on to, the heads. Just throw them all in the bucket, figure out what to do with them afterwards.
It's also helpful to have just a bunch of towels on hand, just for quick cleanup of things, because things spray, things get messy.
That's the table where you're going to be removing everything from the chicken. Next to the table, we had a utility sink that we basically just hooked up a hose to, and that worked out really well. You can just have a hose for kind of cleaning off the chickens after you remove everything, but the sink was really helpful to have, so you could kind of get both hands in there and clean it out good. So a utility sink was awesome to have for that part of the process.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to. You could just use like a spray hose and just spray them down, but it is important to clean those chickens off after and have some sort of way of doing so.
Yeah, and it's kind of a final like examination point. Make sure you look inside, see if you got everything removed and they look good. From there, you'll want to try and chill those chickens down as quickly as you can. And so what we did was we just got a bunch of really big coolers. We basically gathered up all the big coolers that we had, which was like 4 or 5.
Like really big ones.
Big ones. Filled them with water cold water and put our chickens in there for the time being. You don't want to just leave them out at room temperature or leave them out in general, because flies get at them and you want them to start chilling down right away. So that's what the coolers were great for. If they're going to be out for like hours and hours, getting some bags of ice on hand too would be really helpful to really chill those birds down, and putting that in the coolers along with the water.
And this is where it is helpful too to think about your prior to butchering, think about your location that you want to do this on the farm. It's helpful to have a nice shaded area, and I know you can't control the weather, but it is helpful to have like a little bit more windy of a day. That helps keep the flies at bay, because they can be an issue during the processing.
So the next step after they're, after you've basically gotten the chickens in kind of their final form is packaging them. And you can really start this step at any point if you have enough hands on deck that can be
taking them from the kind of gutting station to...
Yeah, you can get going on that right away. We didn't, so we had to just do that all at the end. But basically, the shrink wrap bags have to be dipped into water that's like 190 to 200 degrees. So what we had was a big like turkey roaster pot with a propane tank, and we just kind of regulated the temperature of that for dipping those chickens in. And so you get them in the bag, you zip tie them, you put a straw in there and dip them in there for 10 seconds until the bag shrinks up around them. Yeah, so you might not be packaging them with the shrink wrap bags, but packaging them regardless is kind of that next and final step really before they go in the freezer. We also did, after we packaged them, then we had a station set up for like weighing them and just writing.
Yeah, it's helpful to have like a kitchen scale on hand and a Sharpie.
Yeah, we wrote the weight and the date on there, and then we had runners bringing them to the freezers after that. One thing I'll mention with both like the scalding pot and that turkey roaster, you want to have enough propane on hand, so have an extra tank available. We ran out like part of the way through and didn't have a spare propane tank, so our neighbors ran and got one for us, which was awesome, but now I owe them a propane tank. So just get an extra tank on hand beforehand so you're not running out and then losing all your heat kind of midway through the process.
So that's a rundown of the processing equipment that you need and kind of the setup that you want. And then the last big piece that you need to make your chicken processing day successful is to have enough help. And so this can be really, really crucial. And I would say by enough help, like more than you think you'll need. So even last year when we only did, say, 18 birds, we probably had 7 or 8 people helping us, and it was wonderful because the process really only took maybe 2 hours tops, and it was really smooth, and you can have some people doing the first step and then some people, you can just kind of have enough people at all the steps in the process to keep things running smoothly and efficiently, so there's just not a lot of lingering. And that was so, so nice. And so this last time when we did 63 birds, it was not as ideal. I think there were 5 of us that were doing it, and it took a long time. Like it took pretty much all day. It was a full day process. And so ideally we would have had probably double the amount of people that we had, but that was just where we were at the time. But yes, you'll want to have enough hands. And so just ask around, maybe barter a chicken or two with some friends or family. I mean, I know not everyone's crazy about chicken processing, but for the people that are interested, or if there are people that might be interested in doing chickens themselves, maybe they'll want to come help on your farm. Or maybe you could kind of barter with a neighbor who's also processing chickens that you can help with their processing day and they can help with yours. But however you find people, it's really helpful to have plenty of hands to help. It really makes it so much quicker and smoother and easier for everyone.
Yeah, and another piece on timing too is like, so for instance, our scalder that we were borrowing took like an hour and a half to get up to temperature. So you had to get that thing started well in advance of when you actually want to start the whole chicken processing process. You don't want people showing up and then like, oh shoot, I forgot to turn on that scalder. So things you need to just think through ahead of time. Get it started well in advance, get it up to temperature, so when people show up to help, the whole process can just run smoothly.
Yeah, so that's it, guys. You can totally do it. You can process your own chickens at home. It's totally doable. Just think through all the steps, get the right equipment, and then make it happen. So we hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions for us, please feel free to ask in the comments below. We'd love to answer what we can and help you. So thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.